Now, in this section, we will be, all our students are going to be presenting the IGD Interactive Game Design course and also real-time rendering course. I'm the professor for the Interactive Game Design course, and
And I'm Tim Fritz, and I'm one of the faculty that teaches real-time rendering and capstone and a few other classes not in the showcase today.
all right. Okay, so you guys have worked so hard for this semester. You guys have completed your projects, and we are proud to see what you guys have done. So our students are going to be on the game side. They will be presenting their games and talking about what they have done with their games, and for the real-time rendering side.
So for real-time, they have the option of doing, well, they're animating using Unreal Engine, producing some type of animated short, whether that be a standalone story-based short or doing cutscenes for game projects where they function essentially as contractors for the interactive game design class.
All right, well, without further ado, let's bring the first group up here, and let's start the show.
Are you running the timer? Are you, or who's running the timer? Okay, Chris has it. So. What do you mean you don't have to work? You can't get out and help it. It depends on the group. Okay, okay, you got the schedule.
Hello. I'm Emma Bastian. I was the team lead for Team Board Floors, and I did some 3D modeling and was the main animator.
I'm Benjamin Brown. I was the main blueprinter and did some UI.
I'm Alex Richards. I was main level designer.
I'm Faisal Shaban. I was blueprinter and animator.
I'm Alex Lindy Smith, and I was one of the animators on Team Board Floors.
My name is Noah Morrison, and I'm one of the main 3D modelers and real-time rendering animator.
Hi, I'm Colt Hyde, and I was real-time animation. I did one of the cutscenes.
Hi, my name is Jada Woods, and I was with Real-Time Rendering. I did animation.
My name is Connor Leck, and I was a 3D modeler.
I'm Ardo Law, and I also did level design.
I'm Colton Hayward. I did some blueprinting.
So that was our trailer. That was the cutscenes made from the real-time rendering team. So Sleepy Trigger is a first-person shooter game. The objective is to collect 3 stuffed teddy bears throughout the game. Right now we only had one main level with 3 sub-levels made in it, which is a mom's room, a living room, and what else is it? I forget. The living room, the mom's room, and the kitchen level. So each one has a main boss, and they have little sub enemies in it. So in the mom's room, you have a bed monster, and it has a little robo dog as its little enemy. You have to fight with it. So once you defeat an enemy, you collect the stuffed animal, And then from the stuffed animal, like the taskbar or objective comes out saying to go to the next like level, or it guides you to wherever you need to go after. So when we started creating the game, we knew it wanted to be first person. We knew it wanted to have like the main character just be the weapon itself rather than you pick up a gun. So it kind of helped us with, you know, us exploring more like 3D modeling and animating finger guns almost, and adding in fun like laser beams in the game. And then also when creating the enemies, we wanted to use like kids' imaginations. So when you see like the lava room pop up, that's just the floor is lava, was like the inspiration around it. And then Noah was our main 3D modeler who made some of the sketches or ideas like come to life, and he did a good job on portraying what a kid's imagination would be like if you had a bed monster. It's just big arms coming out from the bed. The kitchen room, the vacuum, we needed like one other main boss, and we thought, what is in a household that's scary and or loud? And we came up with the idea of a vacuum being the enemy, and we did like a play on words, making the dust bunnies its little like army that you also fight with the vacuum. And then I'm gonna give it over to Ben, who was our blueprinter.
Okay, so we have a couple of mechanics for the main character. So we have the finger guns that have an alternating shot, less damage, but more of a fire rate. And then once you bring your finger guns together, you have a big shot, a charge shot, which is more damage and less of a fire rate. And the damage, the base damage for that is 5, and the max damage is 20. Depending on how far you have the charge filled, the correlating damage does the output. So if you have 50% charge, then you're only going to do 50% damage. For the bed monster, it's mainly created with collision boxes. There's an event tick for the left and right side of the carpet, so depending on what side of the carpet you're on, the corresponding arm attack will attack you. There is a attack count for the bed monster up to 3, and then it resets. The reason for that is the dogs spawn randomly, so there's a random number, integer, and range. And so say like the bed monster attacked you once, the random number will generate, and then if it's 1, the dogs will spawn. If it's 3, then you have to wait 3 attacks, and then the dog will spawn. Also, the dog, there's 2 dog spawns, and that's also randomized as well. When I was playtesting, the dog spawns, Unreal like to use the same spawn like 30 times in a row. So I put a cap on to where it only does the same spawn twice. And then the dogs, once you kill them, are also randomized, the health drops. That's the random number that's generated for the dogs, also has a random number generated for the health, and if those equal each other, then the health will drop. And that's it for the bed monster. The lava monster, it's basically straightforward. You have your lava monster with health, and a fireball comes out. You could shoot the fireball, and it'll destroy the fireball before it gets to you. It's pretty straightforward. And then the vacuum, those are both created with the vacuum, and the dust bunnies are created with a behavior tree, so they'll just follow and attack you. Our health bar and stamina bar, those are radial. I wanted to do radial because I wanted to minimize the real estate of the screen. When you use your stamina, it'll deplenish, and then when you're not using it, it'll replenish for you. And then when you activate a quest, it'll come up in the quest box to your right. You can press Q to activate it and it'll slide on. And then you can press Q again to slide off. And that's pretty much it.
All right, me and Larnell, we worked on the level design like we said earlier. We wanted to really just kind of encapsulate like you're in a dream stance. So like whenever you're in the dream stance, it's a lot bigger, like everything's more exaggerated. It's just like a little different than what it would be in the real world just because it's a child's imagination when he's asleep. So really anything is just kind of like, it just looks trash, like it's just an evil version of this child's house is basically what we were trying to go for.
And we're open to questions.
How's it going? All right, yeah, so first of all, I really like, I guess just a quick question. Did you guys make all of these models for like for specifically like the bed, the vacuum, like all the bosses or I guess enemies?
For the enemies, yeah, just anything in the house was just assets that the level designers
Okay,
found.
yeah, I really like those designs. So my question is, what are the players' movement abilities that we have? Because I saw like a double jump, I see like firing, but is there any other movement abilities that you have? And I have a follow-up after that.
I believe there's just the sprint, the jump, double jump, and a sprint jump. That's about it.
Okay, and with that, how are levels designed around those movement abilities in a way that keeps it interesting for the player?
So for for example, like the kitchen, so like there's like little health drops that like kind of guide you to go around the kitchen, so you can kind of jump on like a sack and then the table and then like just do a little parkour around the room. And then it's kind of the same with the other levels as well like with the lava level you see, it's literally all parkour. And then with the kids room, that's just kind of like the base like tutorial, so it's really just that one main jump. And then yeah, just like anything else, we just tried to do that to it. Like just try and guide us around the room with the health drops is what I'm trying to say.
Cool. Okay. And then last question. In like the actual like fights itself, there's like the double jump and like the sprint, are those like necessary for those fights, or is it just kind of just movement to dodge projectiles?
It's just for movement and projectiles. You don't have to, because how Alex and Larnell made it, you can just jump from one place to another, and then there are some, like if you want to go a different route, you can double jump, so there's just 2 different routes you can take depending on which one.
Cool, all right, thank you.
Hi guys, so a couple of things. First of all, I'd like to congratulate you guys on just making a game and working in a huge team. Oftentimes people think like working in a huge team is like some massive benefit, and sometimes it is, and sometimes it's like a headache because it's like, oh, we have so much to do, so much to manage, and everybody's individual stuff has to come together to make a finished product. So I just want to give you kudos to that, because like working in a huge team does pose a lot of challenges that I think people sometimes tend to underestimate or overestimate. A couple of things on the presentation side, because doing this for a few years, we see a lot of games and a lot of cool stuff, but we also care about kind of you guys as well. I would have loved to see more information on the actual like planning side. Like, where did you guys share files? How did you get this project to come together? Individually, I only heard about 3 people speak, but I can see a lot more than that. So I'd like to hear on the expertise of what you added to the project as well. Going on the actual kind of gameplay too, with so many people in your team, you could have formed this to be a bit better, done presentation slides, compiled something in After Effects to show other key parts of the game. We kind of got to see the entire game, so when we go out to play it later, I kind of exactly know what to expect. So there's not really going to be any surprises for me to discover as a player, because it's kind of all on display here. This is a format where you guys can tailor what it is you want us to see, and that's really important too, because when you think about going out for jobs, like applying for things, you want the best parts of your game to be on display so that somebody hires you for what you're good at doing. There's obviously going to be, bugs and problems along the way, and everybody knows that exists, but use this space as a time to kind of showcase, hey, here are all the statistics of the project management side of how we got to this point. Here are my level design documents that showcase why I wanted to add parkour to these levels. Here's my blueprinting documents that explain all the stuff with collisions that you were talking about. Being able to see that and hear it is two different things.
I was just wondering if you guys could expand more on why you chose to go for a first-person shooter game when you could maybe have pivoted towards more of a puzzle-centric design.
I think at the beginning of the semester, when we were grouped together, we were just kind of throwing ideas out, and some of the ideas, most of them stuck with first-person shooting. So I think we stayed with that route, and then from there it kind of just branched more into this type of like adventure / like eerie, mysterious type of game. I don't know. I think with like how Alex made some parkour in it, more like in that route of like adventure and just stayed in the first-person shooting. That's basically it. We just kind of kept that in mind.
Hi guys. I think with the presentation, like the concept that you guys have, it's very strong, and I can definitely see like the cohesion that you guys have and like the enemies that you guys put together. Like that's a lot of work, especially having like custom animations that you guys might need for like battles and stuff like that. With the idea of you guys going with first-person shooter, there's a lot of those games that I see in like even past years. So what I want to hear from you guys is like, how do you guys separate yourselves with other FPS games? Like what is the different kind of like innovations? Like what were the challenges or advantages of doing FPS, and how do you guys make that different from other projects or games like on the market with this game?
I would say for like the animation side of it, I'll be real. I haven't animated like using Unreal, so it was a challenge for me. I enjoyed it though. In the end, it was fun. I learned a lot. And Faisal, who also worked in the real-time section, who also animated. He animated some for the game itself, like with the first-person like mechanics of like the finger guns and whatnot. I know there was challenges there for him because he did like the Unreal mannequin and then had to retarget it with our mannequin, and it didn't come out right. It like broke the fingers, so that was fun. But in the end, I would say it's a lot different from others, because typically in first-person shooter you see a lot of people, you collect guns, you pick up weapons or something and use that, but for ours we just kept it very, you are the weapon essentially. Like you are that, and like how Ben said, he wanted us to implement like, I forget what it was called, like the big gun, so like you charge it up and then it does a different animation, it does different damage. So almost like if you had a primary and a secondary weapon, instead of that, it's just again, the person itself is both those weapons.
Hello. Very, very good job. I can reflect a lot of the sentiment that we've seen so far. I think getting into your design and the planning elements of it, I think would have been really nice. There was a lot of description of like literally what the logic behind the bosses are, and like, yes, it's really hard to make bosses. Yes, it's really hard to do coding, and you want to get into all of that. But I think when you want to get into, I think, some of the stuff that's the creative mindset behind it rather than just the technical implementation, because I think that's going to be the stuff that really gives us a look into what you're doing. One of the things I would also say is, if you were to go further with this, what it's missing for me is, so first of all, I commend you for like kind of shoring up some of the things I had given you feedback on, especially like the kid, at least in the trailer especially, it looked like you had kids' hands, which was really nice. It felt more childlike. And I like the idea of the finger guns because, again, it's that childhood play. I wish you would have gone further in stylizing this thing. Students tend to go like photoreal proportions, photoreal, things, and some of that is that you use like stuff from the asset store, and like we really got to get away from some of the asset store thing, because it pins people into these art styles that make everything look samey. I would have loved to see this thing look like Little Nightmares, or there's a game called 40 Winks from like the PlayStation era that's like very, very stylized, like kid stylized in Nightmares and things like that. I would have loved to see some more art style, especially with such a huge team, some more art style iteration. And you have 1 minute and 30 seconds left.
Okay, this is your last minute. What are the biggest challenges that you had as a team this big, and how did you overcome those? This is a softball one. So.
I would say if we had any issues, I would always put out there, like, if you need help, please, like, message someone, because, again, we are such a big team. Someone has to know something to be able to help. So with us having 3 blueprinters, if someone who I assigned something to couldn't, like, it just wasn't coming out right, I would say, like, message, and I would have either, like, Ben would help, or Faisal, or Colton, like, they would all help each other out. Same with like animating, like I'm not perfect at it, and like we would all help each other basically, is what we needed. And then if not, we would reach out to like Tehran or Tim or someone to help us if we really couldn't figure it out ourselves.
Last minute question for the blueprinters. How did you guys share all your stuff?
So basically on Discord, so I would do a code, see if it was right, and then someone else would do a code, and I would double check it, see if it was right.
Did you consider using GitHub or anything like that as like a repository software to share?
No.
Okay.
I mean, we used Perforce, I will say that. We did use Perforce and uploaded the files. It's just for them on Discord, they would like get a channel together and try to talk it out.
Any other questions from the audience?
Oh, that's it. Time. Never mind. We're done. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Dawson Turska. I'm the project lead for this project.
Hello. Oh. Hello, I'm Steven Sagendoy. I'm the main blueprinter and music composer.
I have one.
Oh, sorry.
I'm Andrew Thomas. I worked on level design, UI design, and I was also a journalist helping out where I needed.
Hello, my name is Jai Amos. I was an overall level designer and a generalist as well.
Hello, I am Jalen Rankin, and I was the level designer for our battle arenas.
My name is Aiden Kearney, and I was one of the 3D modelers.
My name is Tyler Sisley. I handled the animations, rigging, and the cutscene for our project.
Hello, I am Sandy Rao. I handled the animated cutscene and storyboard.
Hail and well met, traveler. If you're looking to venture into these lands, I would take heed, for the evil Lord has risen from his grave and summoned forth an army to invade these once fair lands. But worry not, for the heroes of legend have risen to free this land from the evil Lord. Wait, say again? The heroes have already fallen? If our heroes are already dead, then who has answered their call? Oh dear. These are uncertain times indeed. How did you even get the bear to help?
Yeah, so basically, overall during this project, we ended up having a lot of fun just trying out different things and experimenting with all the assets that we had available. It ended up being a very interesting experiment in how to do a turn-based RPG, and overall, it's been a very interesting project. Yeah, it's like a 30-second timer or something.
In the early design process, originally the entire sort of overworld aspect was going to be a point-and-click open world based on a hex grid, very similar to if you ever played it, For the King series. That's where a lot of this game took very heavy inspiration from. As you we'll talk about later, this later evolved to better suit our needs technically and just experimentally, as well as we all learned this very new system that we were working with. But during the early stages, we also discussed a variety of different biomes that the player would be moving through, as well as the different modifiers that, outside of visually, would make each different combat that you had in these different regions unique.
So after early designs of some of the maps, we needed to figure out what kind of biomes and landscapes that we wanted. The four that we landed on were the forest, coastal, canyon, and dungeon biomes. And we also had two more regions originally, but we sadly had to cut those due to scope. But we also implemented them in smaller ways throughout our exploratory maps, such as we had Tavern, and we implemented it into the forest.
Halfway into development, we hit a bit of a critical junction where if we continued development as it was, we would run out of time. So we changed our overworld to 4 levels. This allowed us to be linear with our narrative application and allowed us to develop environments rapidly, which kind of let us play to our strengths as level designers. As a result, though, there are no random events for players, unfortunately.
So for our assets, we used asset packs for a lot of the environmental details, but when it came to the core elements like our heroes and villains and even the weapons they use, we created those from scratch. Dawson created detailed concept art for each individual character, which I and our friend Pan adapted to a low poly 3D model.
Once we had those 3D models, my bad. Once we had those 3D models created, it was in my hands to finish the rig, and from there I just used a basic workflow, making joints, control rig, and then off to animation.
So for our battle arenas, I kind of took the main lead on that, and my main idea was to just use the playground method, which was going outside, taking random pictures of random things, and then forming that into what our levels would look like.
So for our Explore maps, we made it a top-down point-and-click style, and we also decided to make them fairly free roam for players to explore and find all the enemies in. And Explore levels also hold some secrets and visual storytelling, just to kind of show how much you've progressed throughout the levels. Along with the UI, I wanted to make something sleek and simple, and one of the first inspirations I had for this was Dragon Quest, where you could see all the available actions, the different moves within those actions, and see any relevant information like player health and mana. And I also wanted to implement an information tab so players can see character stats and other information. I also wanted to originally add like a biography for each of the characters, but we sadly had to cut that due to scope.
So for our blueprinting side, we ended up utilizing an asset pack for a turn-based RPG. This allowed us to speed up development greatly since we really minimized development in terms of having to code, and instead could focus on just implementing code assets and making sure everything worked, implementing the assets we needed for design purposes, and it was overall made it very fast.
Yeah, most of the process was just understanding what was already put down from the asset pack and putting down any new features that we wanted. As for music and audio, we didn't want to take ourselves too seriously because it's the story being the misfits, being like these unfit heroes, taking on a very serious task. So all the sound effects and sounds are like random funny gags that you would hear. While still in the battle scenes, it would be a very serious conjunction.
Any questions from the audience?
First of all, good job. I really like the game. So I was thinking more about the combat. I didn't really get much on what that looks like. So it's turn-based, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So I guess what does combat look like? Are there different enemies? How did balancing go behind the scenes? I'd like to hear more about the combat aspect.
So that's a great question. We had it's basically you place down a party of four, and you essentially just place them down on your grid, and then determine like where you want to start with them, do your combat. It's basically just like put them down wherever you choose. The enemies kind of just you kind of go in like alternating order. It's typically like I think the skeletons move really fast, but they're like low hitters. The rats especially. There's rats. They do like minimal awful damage, but they're like really quick. And like there's also goblins, and I think so. It's goblin, skeletons, and rats right now, and we plan on adding more over time. I think there's also a Dark Lord when you get to the final boss for obvious reasons. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, but do the enemies have any like different abilities, like different stats?
Yeah.
And yeah, I guess how did that balancing go?
Yeah. So they all have like different damage ranges. Where it's like the rats are probably like your less damage. Goblins are probably your like multiple attacks, like less damage. Skeletons are like kind of like your moderate, like your average. Like you're gonna see them the most often. They're like your fair hitters. And then the Dark Lord himself is like the most damage. And then we kind of did more of like balancing by just populating with more enemies, because like we know that like the player's abilities are typically all suited to being able to like one or two shot these enemies, and we kind of just balanced it by adding creatures, and that's like since we were working with such a linear like scope, we ended up doing it by more of just populating more enemies on the battlefield.
Sweet, thank you.
If I could join in. The main 4 party members also have special abilities that they can use, such as like debuffs and buffs for your team and like the enemies. You can also like heal and do like AoE attacks as well.
I do have a question about the frame rate. Is this like animated on 2s? The frame rate feels like delayed, or?
This is just the render itself. The actual animation is like I think at like a normal like.
So
it's strictly just this render.
So why did we choose that render?
Because
like, why are we presenting what doesn't look like? That's where I'm confused.
So the reason we needed to at least just visualize the gameplay, and like the presentation in this manner was just by nature of like a crunch of getting the trailer out.
Okay.
And getting everything on time. We didn't have good caption software, so we had to make do with what we had.
Okay, that's it. Okay. Yeah, I would say take the extra time to figure that out, because this looks, the frame rate is notably like not great. So yeah, I would fix that. And then we did talk about the amazing concept art. We didn't get to see the concept art, so I want to see those things. We want to see more of those behind the scenes. Yeah.
First of all, I'd love to say I love the team camaraderie and the dress up to represent the game. I think that whenever you can take what is awesome about your game and kind of showcase it in real life a bit, those are the things that make successful titles. The relatability with like the audience, being able to attribute themselves to a character or something they love about it. I mean, those are the things that I feel like are hard to sell. And so naturally you guys are just doing it, and that's awesome. So I want to give you kudos there. Yeah, a couple of technical things. With the gameplay, not so much just on the frame rate, but the UI itself. I know we talked a bit about that. But in the presentation, we kind of just saw what the inspirations from the UI were. We didn't see the UI actually got to gameplay, and then when we did get to gameplay, it felt like some things were, I'm going to say poorly optimized, but I mean this in a good way. Like, for example, the turn order. The turn order was like the biggest part of the UI. Yeah, it's important, but the player moves, I feel like, would be the most important part of the UI. What can my characters actually do to influence the fight, and how can I win this? And that was kind of like moved off to the back left corner and smaller than the actual turn order itself. So just kind of take that into mind as like, what is the most important part of my game when it comes to this? And when you're doing a turn-based strategy game, finding the numbers and finding the moves are kind of the most important part, because that's why you choose the teammates that you choose. That's why you choose the strategies that you choose. So I'm only nitpicking that because it was the most recent thing, and I feel like it needed a call
out. First of all, awesome job. So I've started playing Balatro recently. And what's interesting to me about that game, for those who don't know what that is, it's a game that's been nominated for Game of the Year, and it's what if poker was solitaire, but also like this other game called Dominion, where you like customize your deck. And what's interesting to me about that game is that it shows a really great depth of knowledge about games and game design, and just like shows that the developers have this deep pool of influences. To think like, I want to make a video game project, I'm going to make poker, but solitaire. And I say this all to commend you all for the approach that you took. I think so often we're tempted to make these adventures, and you're making an RPG, but you are starting with this like kind of board game strategy format, and it shows, I think, a depth of different influences. So I really want to commend you on that, because at the core it is this like board game experience that you've sort of like built on. So I think that's really cool. I think you've got something here. I think you could sell it more. I think on your trailer, you know, like have it be like, oh, the heroes have fallen. Show a big beefy guy going down in shiny armor, because you know we got to the point where it's like, oh, the heroes have fallen. Then you cut to like a guy fighting the skeletons. I'm like, well, that guy's a hero. But so we don't know that they're like misfits. And I would even like play with their design more. Again, I want to see concept art. I want to see how we've arrived at these guys being misfits, because I think you could misfit them up even a little bit more. Like, you know, I'm thinking with the proportions you've used, I'm thinking of this like Zelda character that it's like a kid with like a giant booger hanging down his, you know, it's some of those like moves, maybe not a booger, but like, you know what I mean? Yeah, make them look like more commoners, you know. So that I think could really emphasize it. But I think you've got some, and then your trailer actually could have been longer. I think you could have, because you finished like well under the time that we'd talked about. You could have just had a sizzle reel to talk about like what's the battle system like. You could have just sizzle reeled the battle system a bunch. Like, you've got game there, you know, show it off. So I think, yeah, you almost get, with what you've developed, you almost bought yourself the ability to break the usual 30 seconds to a minute format, I would say.
Yeah, if I may, one thing I would definitely like to do is reevaluate the trailer. We had to create it under a very short period of time, about like 1 day. So it was very like, just us trying to get as much footage as we can to assemble it. But if we were to go back, I would love to redo it and do it with like a full pass and like really meet the vision that I'd like to meet for it.
I think the lesson there, and again, this is a lesson for everybody though, schedule time for your marketing assets. Marketing assets are a task, they're not an afterthought. So everybody, put that in your schedule. You know, again, this is why we have you use scheduling software.
All right.
How much time?
We got plenty of time if anybody else has any questions. Yeah, to Chris's point, because I do want to say a couple of things, and this is not a dig at you at all, but for everybody who's going to be presenting, when you do introductions, the person who's speaking step forward. There's a lot of times where like I didn't even get to see the back row just because of how it was. It's your time. Please tell me about you. I want to know you. I want to know what you did on this project. So with that out of the way, yeah, marketing is huge. It's what sells games. That's how games get funded, is through successful Kickstarter ads and things like that. Being able to put stuff out to a publisher. And I mean, publishers really just kind of reskin what is already there, right? Project management is a hard role. And so when teachers kind of give advice of like use these project management suites, there's a reason this exists. And when you do become like professional, when you do get that big job, move up to even senior level, most of your time is going to be spent scheduling other people's stuff, right? So it's a necessary skill that if you grasp now, it's just going to compound and become a lot better. And you guys had amazing gameplay. If you would have just spent the extra day or 2 or 3 to just tweak that and have a better presentation, it would be a lot different.
Yeah, so just like as he mentioned, like project management is a huge thing, and that's like something that I took the lead on when it came to like your guys' like the IGD RTR projects, because a lot of the work that comes into it is a lot of the pre-planning, the pre-production stuff, and then production becomes that much easier because you know what you're going to be expecting. You know, okay, I need to get it done in this time, and if I can't, all right, we got to like kind of move stuff around and things like that. And I think that's also not just like with game development, but also like the trailer that you guys had and like the or were you guys doing like real-time rendering with the
yeah,
beginning
so
cutscene?
part of the footage from our trailer is actually from that real-time rendering cutscene, and it does show up in the game like on first launch.
Sure. Okay. Yeah. Awesome. And I think that you do have to like find that level of care of how do you distribute the appropriate time you need for like each part, right? And that's with like scope, and you guys had to like take out 2 bonus levels. Like that's really good that you guys recognize that early on and can work on other things that enhance like, okay, we can put our attention like here. And there's like another thing I wanted to talk about, which was the beginning cutscene. So this is probably going to be directed towards Sandy, who did like this storyboarding and stuff like that. So what were like what was like the planning like for that? Because it kind of feels like you took like the brunt of that. I'm not like, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I know there's a lot to plan on, like what are these shots gonna look like? And I like the part where that camera went into like the eye of like the skeleton. I thought that was really cool. So I want to ask, like, what were the challenges? What were some of the research that you did to get certain shots, or maybe to understand the flow of the cutscene to meet your guys' vision?
Yeah, so I think I'm actually the only person who's not in the interactive group. I'm just in real-time rendering. Tyler's also in real-time rendering. So at the start of the semester, I kind of like wrote up a script for after hearing out what the game's story is like. I wrote out a script for what I thought would make a good cutscene, sent it over to the project lead. After it got approved, I made the storyboard, sent it over to the project lead again, got approval for it, and then I basically split the work half and half with Tyler. I did the first half of the cutscene, he did the second half, and yeah, that's kind of how we worked from there.
Awesome, thank you.
Is that it? Chris? We out of time? Is that time, Chris? Yeah. Okay. Thank you all. Anything else you want to add? You got 20 seconds.
I just wanted to briefly say that I am incredibly grateful for the team I had with me, because if we didn't have them with me, this would not have gotten done. And I'm just incredibly grateful for the opportunity, and I look forward to seeing the work that they do in the future.
You guys did so good. Congratulations. Scott! Whoa!
I tried and it was just all patchy.
Oh no, not the
patch.
It's so bad.
I feel like now that we're like doing our town, everything finally clicks.
Want to do trailer first? Oh, okay. Can we do the trailer first? Yeah. Okay, yeah. Hi, I'm Goldeye. That was Necrolumen, or Team Survival. I worked on the character, animation, texturing, rigging, all that. Did a little bit of blueprinting on the side. Yeah, and I guess I'll just also say that Necrolumen is a fixed camera survival horror game where your goal is to explore the manor, find notes to uncover the story and the lore, and to find a key to hopefully escape. Yep.
I'm Brady Haynes. I was the lead programmer for Necrolumen, and I also did the level lighting.
I'm Anthony Zurich. I was a level designer in the level sketch.
Hi, I'm Nick, and I was also a level designer. And so I did that exterior courtyard. And so to do this, I used Unreal Assets. And so I want to have like a spooky feeling. So to do this, I had like gargoyle statues and like broken areas.
I'm Hayden Grove, and I worked on the character animation, modeling, rigging, and texturing for the monster, as well as a bit of extra level design. I mean, aside from exploring the manor, yep, your goal is to find a key to escape. There is a monster that lurks around. Obviously, you don't want to get killed by that. The player is able to hear it coming. It has ambient occlusion with the sound. You want to avoid it not to see you in the first place. If it does see you, you could try to outpace it. If you're smart enough, you could also hide in closets to avoid it altogether and hope it wanders off. But other than that, I think we're good to open to questions.
So I worked on the blueprinting for the project. I started obviously with the fixed camera perspective, and then I moved on with the interaction system, a very rough mock-up of it. After that, we got our initial early draft of our character, and I also implemented an inspect item system with the name of the object and a short little item description next to it on top of a little note system that you can either set to immediately read when you interact with it, or you can inspect the note first and then press space to read. And I also implemented, as you'll see in a little second, some hiding spots to hide from the monster. You just go in, the monster loses you, he searches for a few seconds, and he goes back to patrolling. And I also did some pretty basic AI for the monster.
So during development, my choice with the level design was to make it big, to make the player feel small, because you're in a scary mansion, so you're unsure of where you are, so it's bigger. During development, it had to be scaled down a bit, so it went through some revisions, but I got it to where I think it's perfect. Well, not perfect, but like, I'm proud of it. I think it's good. I also had help from Nick and Hayden on the level design. I mainly focused on the bottom floor, and the detailing, the floors, the walls, the ceilings. And once the level design was scaled down enough, the rooms just felt so much more natural because originally they were massive. It's not realistic. But I think I got it to where it looks really nice.
So originally, there wasn't even supposed to be an exterior. And so I just came up with a decided to do it because I thought it would really spice up the level a bit. And it would set the tone before you even traverse the mansion.
For the monster, we tried to go for something that seemed emaciated yet also muscular. Our main premise behind it followed a similar concept to an anglerfish, with the eye acting similar to a light and could even at times be mistaken for one. We did go through a few different concepts, but we mainly stuck with the same concept of the monster having a singular eye, but we did have it once where it could have been more of just a hole in the head, and we would have had a light.
Okay, now I think we're ready to open to questions.
Hi there. Yeah, this is a very visually striking project. I can definitely see it in the trailer, but one thing that I didn't really get as much is just generally how the gameplay is meant to be. I see that it's survival horror. I see your in progress stuff, which is really cool to see. I'm glad you guys included that. But one thing I wasn't sure about was that I was getting from the trailer, but not from your subsequent presentation, was and it sounds kind of inconsequential, but just kind of the camera behavior, because in your trailer I could see it was almost like that old Resident Evil static camera survival horror style, versus in your in progress stuff it was just kind of that third person camera following the character. So I guess what was the end goal there?
So I got the actual system down for the fixed camera pretty much early. It was pretty much the first thing I did. But I waited until the level design was more or less finished to actually go through and place those fixed cameras. When you actually go and play the game out in the lobby, you'll see that the entire game is fixed camera. And when you hit those those triggers, they'll change cameras and stuff like that.
Okay, yeah, that brings up another point too, because the reason that game genres can be defined by just their camera angle alone from time to time is that really changes what kind of information is available to the player. So it's interesting that the level designs were nailed down first before those fixed cameras were put up, unless that was kind of the general plan of how that was going to end up, so you could kind of plan around it. But what makes that effective is you can really author what you're going to show to a player in a scene. One example could just be having a dark corner in a room outside of the player's view that the monster's hiding in, that sort of thing. So yeah, definitely and I've seen this with a lot of the projects, definitely more of a clear progression of how everything came to be as you're talking about it, and as you're showing it visually up on the board, can definitely really help illustrate your design process.
I'm going to rapid fire some feedback here. First of all, some kudos. So the lighting was awesome, especially kind of with the candelabra and the shadows mixed with some of the volumetrics. It was so nice. I was also really surprised by how well the levels looked with the camera angles that you chose. The approach of kind of having things like look a little bigger might feel really off, and yeah, it doesn't really make sense when you apply it to the real world. But like a lot of your camera angles looked really natural. The scale looked good from what you chose, and I was surprised to hear that how you went about the process produced those results. I think that's really awesome. A couple of things when it comes to presentation, though. I know Scott kind of mentioned this. Justin and I were talking a bit here. When you present, it's really an opportunity for you to sync up what you're talking about and what we are seeing on screen. When you're talking about a monster and there's no monster on screen, we're like, where's the monster? So we don't really want that disconnect. We want to see what it is that you're talking about. So when you're presenting, just try to sync that up a bit better. Again, it is that pre-planning thing. It's something that you're probably not used to, and you only really get as good as you have the opportunities to do that. But it really is important.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, real quick, gonna break my own rule. Level design feedback. Everything had the same texture. Change up the textures. Interior should look different from exterior. And the reason that the Spencer Mansion works in Resident Evil is because you have distinct, memorable zones. Build those with your things. I also loved the Resident Evil approach to the camera angle, because basically you're using an old style that was disliked, bringing it back, and it's getting reclaimed in the industry a little bit. In the indie space, and you are bringing in, essentially, you're using it for its intended effect, which is like cinematography. So, there you go.
Thanks.
This right. Okay, cool. Hello, everyone. We're Team Seabird Supper, and we're here to present our game, Dinner is Served. My name is Micaiah Harris, and I was the project lead programmer, level designer, UI artist, and I also did a little bit of lighting.
Hi, my name is Kai Fiala. I was the main character modeler, animator, and I also worked on some 2D assets.
I'm Logan Jackson. I did level design and also some blueprinting.
I'm Autumn Lewis. I'm one of the level designers and the environmental artists.
I'm Gavin Hughes. I did environment art, level design, and some 3D modeling.
I'm Adam Riemann. I did level design and environment art.
I'm Nicholas Hansen, and I did blueprinting mostly.
Alrighty, and we're good. So our game is called Dinner is Served, as I mentioned, and it is a cozy collectathon with an emphasis on platforming and exploration. And in it, you play the seagull who has a penchant for tasty food and petty theft. And you have to go around this little seaside town, infiltrate the restaurants, pester the locals, all to find your next great meal. And so two of our main inspirations for the game were Little Kitty Big City and Untitled Goose Game. We really wanted to have that kind of like cozy, chill vibe where you're just a silly little animal doing silly little animal things. And to that end, we wanted to focus on a few key like gameplay themes, namely, as I kind of said earlier, exploration / traversal, platforming, and stealth. And so two of the things that I'm going to talk about right now are kind of the exploration and platforming. So two of the mechanics that kind of support those are the stamina system and kind of flight mechanic. Those are some of the things that I personally spent the most time on. The stamina affects both your sprint and your flight, and as you go around the town and you collect these various foods, you get a stamina boost that allows you to sprint for longer and fly higher. And so that was something that took a lot of trial and error to get quite right during kind of the blueprinting stage, tweaking a lot of values to make sure that things drained at the correct rate and that the flight actually, felt natural and didn't feel too floaty or too heavy. And so, like, for example, one of the problems that I ran into with that a little bit was the sprint kind of drained instantaneously for a while there, even though the flight was completely fine. That was really strange, so we just had to kind of tweak the values and play test that until that worked as intended. And so as for our kind of environment design, we wanted to take inspiration from seaside towns and places all around the world, like Italy, Norway, and also the American East Coast. And so we put together some references to do that. And I'll hand it over to Kai now.
Hi, so for our seagull design, we went for a guild,
ring build goal.
Ring build goal, thank you. Combining words in my head, that's what being on stage does to you. And I started off with some really basic modular-esque low poly designs because we wanted to go for this more friendly vibe. I mainly worked in Blender, used some add-ons to do some rigging, and did all of my animating inside Blender and imported it separately to Unreal. All of our animations, I wanted to have a key distinction between them all so you can tell what the bird is doing at all times.
So each mission, we made sketches beforehand to map out what we wanted the objectives to be, what we wanted the player path to be. We also did some gray boxing after that for each mission separately. In this section, we really wanted to make sure we showed visually what the player would be doing, what the threats would be, how we would have to design the level around that. It was also in this section we started to realize some of the levels needed to be kind of shrunk and adjusted throughout the process to make them better fit the map and then also the overall feel of the game. And then we did the town gray box, the overall city, and the main thing I did was blueprinting the NPCs, the hostile NPCs. We had a detection system that was mostly done by me, a 3-tiered detection system, so it would recognize the players there, stop and investigate, and once it saw it long enough, it went on and chased the player.
And right here you can also see the flight system that I touched on a bit earlier. There were a lot of different moving parts from the takeoff to the landing. There's an air dash that you can do when you kind of double press space when you're already in the air, so that was also pretty interesting to figure out. And as kind of a final remark, we did have to deal with some scope management things over the course of the project. One of the biggest things was kind of like scaling down the town and condensing our kind of main mission and exploration area a bit more so that the player had enough to do and they weren't like just wandering around forever and ever. And we're now open for questions.
First of all, love the style of the game. It kind of reminds me of Goat Simulator too. I like that you can just like poop on things. That's fun. It's very cool. I guess one of my questions is, with having like all three motions of direction, like you can go upwards and like, obviously horizontally, but I feel like with that, it's very easy to break the game and go where you aren't supposed to. So what have you done to limit player movement or keep them where they're supposed to go without, ruining the gameplay for the player?
We do have like invisible walls around the kind of accessible area for the player, and in most cases we tried to put kind of like natural obstacles there so that people would kind of know like, oh, I'm not supposed to go back there, there's nothing back there, or there's like a barrier, there's like a car accident actually at one point that you can't really go past, so just visual hints like that.
And we did realize that the player movement would provide some challenges as well to making the player go where we want them to go. A way that we address this with the construction level is there's actually many ways to get in, so it's more of a how do you feel like you should get around this problem rather than trying to funnel them into one specific choice. And as we went along, we started to more and more lean towards letting the player decide where they want to go and have their own fun rather than try and limit their experience, because we found it was more fun overall for them to just be able to do that.
Yeah, I really like that. That's very cool.
Question for you guys. So obviously, platformer, objective-based, there's things that you want the player to complete, but you're referencing a lot of games where there's a lot of like Easter eggs or like make your own fun, and we can see that with like the pooping on the car and all of that. I know that's a mechanic that keep getting referenced. But have you added in anything else that kind of like plays on those Easter eggs? Like for example, when you do inevitably defecate on a car, like is there unique dialogue that triggers? Like what makes the world feel inviting that incentivizes that exploration?
So that is definitely something we'd like to lean way more into in future iterations of the game. But one thing that we did include is that there are some reactive NPCs that will kind of shoo you away when you get close to them, or you can kind of run in front of them and stop them from getting where they're going. But that is definitely something we'd like to add a lot more to in the future.
We also have collectibles right now, postcards, so that if you go and explore different areas, you can find them and get rewarded for your exploration.
Yeah, couple of additional notes beyond that. Awesome job. It's really hard. It's really awesome to see a game come together that's super stylized and not just kind of see a clash of styles where it's the students are trying to like chase the asset packs that they chose or vice versa, and everything kind of cohesively comes together in a really nice fashion. So really awesome job there. Couple of comments specifically with the camera angle. Again, Justin and I were kind of talking, and it's a bit of a challenge because you have this game that you want to have you want to allow the player to see the things that they want to see. But then there are some kind of angles where like if they kind of go too low, everything kind of feels a bit off. You might want to consider maybe clamping the camera so it can only rotate within certain ranges or changing the ranges that it could rotate towards. When you kind of get the camera too low and you're kind of seeing up the seagull's butt, it just kind of the scale of everything looks off, and it's not really a really incentivizing angle with the character being the focal point in the center the entire time.
All right, one quick thing. I think this is great. I think you should keep making it. I think this should be a thing that people can get. It's a great indie game style game, especially coming off of the heels of something like Untitled Goose Game. I urge you to sit down and really think hard about your music. That was like, you had a kind of tropical vibe, but it was sort of like trailer music. Goose Game captured everybody's attention, not only because it's a fun game about a bird being awful, but its tagline is, "It's a lovely day in the village and you're a horrible goose." Like, it's a lovely day at the docks and you're a horrible seagull. Like, and it captures that vibe in, like, it uses Debussy. It uses classical music. So, like, either sit down and really think about that musical identity or consult with a composer, because I think that's going to help wrap it up.
It's important to note that the trailer music is different. There's different spots in the levels, the open world level itself, where different music does play. That was purely just the trailer song. It does not pop up anywhere else.
Well, I know, but again, thinking about that marketing that's going to really, that's like one of the most important places where having that musical identity is going to come in. All right.
Great work, by the way. I just want to add one thing. Have you thought about being able to recruit other seagulls? I kind of thought that's what was happening when they were on the car. I thought they were like pooping together. Have you thought like whole team? I don't know. So yeah, multiplayer, so something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, that definitely would be something we would consider. The sequels don't do anything right now, but I could see a future version of the game where you can interact with them and either like actually recruit them or just have some like funny little dialogue exchanges.
So, interactive game design, does that still happen during the junior year? I think it's junior year. Yeah. Have you guys ever allowed or considered like letting students that have strong projects carry that into capstone as like an iterative process? That's a good idea. Yeah. Because like
Instead of starting something new.
yeah,
like
because
just
projects like
continue on with
these, like you could really kind of like push to the next level and then have more of a finished product to come out of college.
If they make it through, just keep going.
I know that's
Hello, my name is Joseph Berlin. I was one of the animators for Seabird Cinema.
Hi, I'm Jen Vivian. I was the storyboarder and animator for Seagull Cinema as well.
Hello, I'm Nicholas Hansen, and I was also one of the animators for Seabird Cinema.
Alrighty, so we had originally proposed this as an idea for like an intro cutscene for the Seabird or Dinner with what was the name again? I forget. Dinner is Served. Sorry, we were referring to him as Seabird Supper the whole time. However, it was eventually decided that we should go separate ways. We wanted to create a funny little animated short just to help showcase the seagull and like the stealth aspect of the game. And also we had the character get fries, but then lose them to help tie into the start of the game where they go and get fries again.
Yeah, so before we decided to start working on the storyboard, we ended up figuring out if we wanted to do an intro cutscene or multiple cutscenes that would go throughout the game. The storyboard is based on the first level of the game and the abilities that you would have during that time. And we decided to make it, this made the seagull more grounded, which allowed us to make it more sneaky and playful.
Which for the animations themselves and much of the project, for at least the seagull, we started our animations through Blender and then translated them into Unreal. Then with every other asset and animation we did, we were able to animate purely within Unreal and then render and shoot it out through Unreal. Any questions?
Yeah, nice work on that. The one thing I noticed is for most of the scene where they're sitting at the table, the camera focus was off. The depth of field seemed incorrect. I'm not sure. Is that? Was that intentional, or was that an accident, or did we not notice? That's my
That
question.
was an accident. We were struggling with the depth of field a little bit. That might have just got missed in all the work.
Hey everyone. So okay, couple of things. There's going to be something like confusion, obviously, when you're working on a project the whole time. Sometimes you have projects that go under code names, and then finalized names get decided on. Make sure that when you're presenting, just before you get up there, you know exactly what you're following, because they had just presented, so that is kind of like a big disconnect there. And even from like a contractor's perspective too, it's important to know who your clientele is, and make sure that when you interact with them, that they kind of feel respected and all of that. Secondly, there's a lot of personality in the game that just was presented. And a cinematic is an opportunity to over-exaggerate the selling points of the game. The game is meant to kind of follow titles like Untitled Goose Game that kind of have that, or Goat Simulator as well, that kind of have that whimsical nature to it. And we've seen kind of represented in the mechanics, like with the pooping mechanic and all of that, there are really awesome things that just lend well to humor. It's just those kind of things go well together. Maybe potentially going back in time when you're in that pre-production process, learning what the mechanics of the game are to that depth, the important ones, but also just the funny ones that give the game the charm. That could have led well to a different cinematic that would have given the seagull more charm than just kind of what it felt like was just being a seagull.
Just to piggyback off of what Joey was just saying, what I wanted to see from that was a Chuck Jones cartoon. You mentioned Goose Game. That trailer opens up with that game opens up with a bush, and then when you press the button, the goose's head goes pops up, and then you can honk, and it's perfect, right? But there's a quickness to that. And this, and it's not something that's just you all, I see this in a lot of student projects, is that it's the seagull kind of slowly raised its head and then slowly flew onto the dock. And then the guy who had a seagull on his table is hi, seagull, no, don't look at my, it's there seemed to be no hurry, and it needs to go snap, 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 snap. It needs to, watch physical comedy. That's what, and everybody doing animation, if you're doing that, watch physical comedy. See how fast things move. See how reactions happen, because the reactions happening suddenly are what makes it funny. And I didn't really get that here, right? Everything was just very, so snap it up.
I do want to add on what Chris just said. It definitely seems like just the lack of exaggeration kind of holds you back in what you're trying to, the scene you're trying to depict. And I can definitely see on the technical side of what seems to be the case is you guys are kind of fighting the automatic interpolation that you get from 3D animation software. So looking at reference with slapstick comedy is a great way to start of being okay, this is how we want things to be timed. This is how we want these key poses to have that impact. But also, you see with animatics, and I don't know what the criteria for the presentation was. So with these animated real-time rendering projects, if they were required to make an animatic for that, that can definitely help in just getting you to nail down those key poses, and then you can worry about smoothing those down into what that is meant to be. But like the hardest thing to get right in animation is timing, because that really sells more often than anything else. Like the impact of an action, the kind of weight of an action, and just like, you know, in your case, you want things to be funny, you want things to be exaggerated. So like focusing on nailing down those key aspects before getting into the nitty-gritty will definitely help in future projects that you work on.
Hi, I'm Lily Blackwell. I was the group lead on Stealth Archer. I worked on level design and project management.
Hi, my name is Jerry Kinder. I worked on the enemies and animations in the game.
My name is Stephen Wallace. I did the systems blueprinting, project management, and I directed the animatic.
My name is Justice Fike, and I worked on the menu UI and blueprinting.
Hello, my name is Nathan Jones. I was in charge of level design and decoration, and also did 2D art and a little bit of texturing modeling for the projectiles, and I was also part of the real-time rendering team working on the trailer.
Hi, I'm Darren Vanyo. I worked on the trailer animation and the sound design for the trailer and the game.
Hello, my name's Logan Hunter. I worked on the pre-production storyboard for the trailer, and I also did the animation for the trailer, and I also did the logo design.
Hi, I am Ray Lumley, and I worked on the 2D animatics for the trailer and the cinematic. I also helped with sound design and animation for the trailer.
You can probably turn it up a little bit.
All right, so our game Stealth Archer is a silly VR game where you can shoot just about anything. When we were coming up with ideas for the game, all we knew is that we wanted to do a VR game. We bounced around a lot of ideas, different genres, horror game, golfing simulators, before joking about remaking Skyrim, but forcing the player to be a stealth archer.
And then we figured out how you would go about doing that. What's the premise? Well, what if there's a bow stuck to their hand? Well, why is it stuck to their hand? The low poly look of our game was inspired by a totally accurate battleground simulator with some comedic elements inspired by the game Jazzpunk.
For our game, we decided to go with pre-made assets from the asset pack Polygon. In that pack, we managed to find our enemies, and those enemies we were able to make to wander, patrol, attack the player, and die in the ragdoll animation. We also have a boss enemy that has its own unique fight. And all our animations in the game come from Mixamo. However, they weren't easily made onto our skeleton because the enemy skeletons were made with Unity compatibility, which messed it up a bit. And to address this, we had to create custom IK inverse kinematic rigs. And this process took a few days, but we successfully retargeted the animation to the new IK rigs, ensuring better animations for our character. And the music in our game, most of the music, comes from the original composer of Elder Scrolls for both Morrowind and Skyrim. His name is Jeremy Soule, and he allows royalty-free use of his Northern Diary album as long as it's used only in game projects, and he's listed in the credits.
I worked on creating the main menu level and the interactable level select buttons and level loading areas in between levels. And I also created the UI for the volume controls and the base bow and arrow blueprints.
For our systems blueprinting, these are just examples for the player and the bow. A few specific mechanics for the player was a smooth locomotion addition. For more advanced players to be able to walk around and interact with their environment with just thumbstick movement rather than teleporting around and just doing that. And then we developed a custom bow blueprint to set projectiles to check for anything within the radius and apply force to projectiles based on its draw distance and recharge larger projectiles to smaller for better visibility. And then a simple player inventory system that basically just detects projectile objects within the range and holds them there until you grab them again. It's located on your hips. And then the wizard enemy was created differently than other enemies to detect how far the player is away from the wizard to shoot fireballs at them if they're too far. And while they were within melee range, it would do a hurricane kick, which is very lethal, so keep your distance and use the bow. And then I also created a modular projectile system, which allowed us to create 90 unique projectiles for the player to shoot, and we populated the levels with tons and tons of projectiles, so almost any object you see, you can grab it, put it in your bow, and shoot it at an enemy.
I designed the levels using a software called Dungeon Alchemist. Dungeon Alchemist is a program designed for originally creating Dungeons & Dragons maps, but it has the bonus feature of allowing you to be able to walk in first person to test your levels. For those that are familiar, it works very similar to Blizzard's Warcraft 3 map editor, so that was extremely easy to use. When I designed the prison, I wanted it to look and feel like a blend of several of Bethesda's titles, but also while trying to keep it original for us. Our forest is the largest of the levels, so I tried to design it with the idea that the player can freely explore it, or if they just so desire, they can just go straight to the castle and find the wizard. And basically, all the levels, I try to encourage the player to freely explore and find interesting things. The town is full of patrolling guards to try and prevent the player from reaching the wizard's castle. I designed it to feel very lived in with many nooks and crannies. This level also is the one with the most Easter eggs. This is the one I had the most fun creating. The wizard's castle is the smallest of the levels, but I tried to design it to feel bigger than it actually is. The throne room is slightly inspired by the Red Wedding from Game of Thrones. This is also the level where you will face off against the wizard in the final showdown.
And for project management, we use Helix for planning and Perforce for vision control. Setting up multiple sprints throughout the 3 months really allowed us to create or focus on and assign specific tasks to complete at reasonable times within a deadline. It also helped with scope management to see what we needed for more attention and cut from the final build. And then, I think we can open up for questions, and we'll just have gameplay play in the background.
what an awesome idea that everything is a projectile in a VR game. That is so smart. I absolutely love that mechanic, and I love the play too. I'm kind of like, okay, the meme of like Skyrim Stealth Archer kind of brought into a game that's unique, that's stylized, that comes together well, and that has such a fun mechanic. So really awesome job there in the conceptual stage. And also, thank you for mentioning sprint planning and showing a sprint plan. Oh my gosh, wow. I see that at work every day, and I'm so glad because you can choose whatever project management software setting that you want, but to actually do it is a different thing, and to see it being done is awesome. So mad respect there. A couple of comments on the level design, and this is just more kind of to the Archer thing. With what was being seen, I didn't really see many like vantage points for the Archer to like look down on. Did you take into consideration different like tactics in approaching the encounters that you've laid out, or did you kind of create an open world in which it's more exploratory based? I wasn't seeing if there's really incentives to exploring.
Yeah, in early plans in our development, we planned for elevation and a mechanic that we had to cut for scope, but it's something we do plan on including, is grabbing your leg and shooting your own body up a cliff and landing on top of the cliff so you can get vantage points. Obviously, we cut that for now, but it's definitely something we want to do. But with teleportation movement, you are able to get to elevated points, and we do have like mapping for those nav mesh, like.
To echo what Joey said, this looks very fun. This is very cool. I will definitely be playing it out in the lobby. I find the combat looks really fun. Do you have anything, because I'm a big Zelda guy. I love me some combat, but I also love some puzzles, and I feel like you have like a lot of really cool opportunities to do that here. Are there any puzzles or anything involving that's in the game that's not shown, or is that, I guess, not part of the picture?
Currently, there are no puzzles. We were planning on having collectibles, like small little things, so you could change the visual of your bow, like different skins for your bow, and like little areas to explore. We have those areas. It's just including the puzzles and the tricks to get there. We ended up cutting because the learning curve for this whole thing was a little large, so scope was.
Very cool.
Okay. Grayson just gave me an idea. So speaking of puzzles, go play Echoes of Wisdom, which is the new Zelda. And that's the one where you can like conjure whatever. And so many memes are being made of like, what about like 6 beds? And they're like, that's solving all your problems. So like play that and then kind of like get a feel for that absurdity where it's like all your problems can be just like solved with 6 beds. So yeah, that kind of stuff.
Side note, you can shoot beds in this game.
See, and that's exactly why, is that I want you to get that sort of like, get in that mindset of, you know, it's a playground, but then you can kind of really, and when you do a project like this, you've given yourself a funny mechanic, and then you've started being like, wait, we got to make content out of that. So you've given yourself a playground. And now that you have the playground, now you've got to like bottle that and make it like a progression. And that's a good problem to have. So like, you know, all of this is to say, which was going to be my other piece of feedback, is that, you know, this is another one where I look at it and I'm like, oh yeah, no, that's going to be like on Steam soon. That's going to be like on Kickstarter. So let's talk about your marketing. Trailer's really awesome. The only thing that I would cut is like when you show the Archer, it's like, it takes you a second to like, what the hell is that? And I think you could have just cut to a person in VR, like wearing the VR goggles. And then I think it would have been clearer instead of like the rig with the bow and the VR goggles, because it takes a minute and it's like, what's this jumble of stuff? So I think taking you out of the world and then getting you back in the world, I think would have made it, punctuated it better. Everything else is awesome. Clean up the logo. It's very hard to read, but I do like the idea of like launching the chicken with the bow. But I think you could make that, like it could just be like the bow is on one side, or like the bow is one of the letters, and then a chicken is like flying away from the, you know, keep it simple. But again, that's talk to a graphic designer, get some help on that. I think otherwise it's really awesome.
Thank you.
Is there an option to switch the dominant hand of the bow?
We were going to include that. We cut that for scope because it was difficult parenting the bow to the hand currently, and then swapping them was a separate process because we were having an issue where the bow was constantly being dropped when it wasn't being played on an index, where you had to constantly hold a trigger or like constantly making contact because other VR controllers do not have that kind of like constant input of touching an object like the index does. So we did talk about that. That is something we wanted to include. Fitting it within this 3 months was difficult, but thanks.